Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
That the words of our mouth, my mouth, and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Please be seated. All of us have computers, I'm pretty sure. And we also know that when the computer is on and running, or our cell phones are running, there's a lot going on in the back side of that computer that we never see or have anything to do with. It just does it when you turn it on. Well, stories have what are called backstories. And backstories are the story behind the story kind of a thing. So what's the backstory of today's gospel story? Well, it's basically remind the people who are with Jesus are reminded of the Exodus and the wilderness experience. If we go back to the book of the Exodus, we see two great miracles that Jesus worked, God the Father worked. And one of them was, I have a couple of props here for you. One is the bread, the manna from heaven that was given in chapter 16. And then in chapter 17, we have a rock, the water from the rock when they were thirsty. And Jesus in today's gospel actually taps into both of those parts of that story. Last week's gospel, we heard that Jesus goes to a mountain, and the time of the liturgical year for Jewish people was the Passover. So this backstory of the Exodus and the wilderness experience and all the things that transpired there are in the backside of this story. The people who are hearing Jesus know what time of the year it is liturgically, and they're starting to get the point, and he multiplies the loaves. Then he goes back to Capernaum on the boat, or the disciples go on the boat, he walks on the water, and the people wake up the next day and say, where'd he go? And that's how we get to today's gospel, because they are seeking Jesus to hear more of his story. And so when they go to him and they ask him, how did you get here? He doesn't say, I walked on the water. He says, you're not asking for the right reason. And then they begin to talk about this manna and the bread from heaven. And Jesus corrects them and said, it's not Moses who gave you that bread, your ancestors that bread, it was my Father. Well, that's a big statement to say. And so the people who were there will say, well, look, if we don't want to work for bread that goes away, what do we do? What do we have to do to get something that's eternal? And Jesus says, you have to believe in the one that God has sent. And that is a huge theme throughout John's gospel. Believe in the one whom he has sent. And then they say, well, okay, so what are you going to do to show us? Jesus says, goes into the talk about, I'm the bread of life. I am the part that gives life eternal. And at that point, the people are amazed at what he says. And then he says, all who come to me shall not be hungry, and those who are thirsty will not thirst. And if we're there and we're Jewish and we're hearing that story, we know what happened in the wilderness. But what Jesus is talking about is something that never stops. It goes on through eternity. And so the story today is a continuation of last week's story. And if we want to hear how Jesus is going to really talk about this, we have to come back to the next 3 weeks. Because he takes this, I am the bread of life, and goes through a whole teaching on the bread of life. And the teaching takes place in the synagogue. But we don't find that out till the end of the chapter, that's where he is. And he's going to talk about taking care of people who are thirsty in chapter 7. But we don't hear chapter 7 for a long time. And so Jesus is telling the people, stick around and listen for some more, because there's more to come. This is just the beginning of this part of the story and this teaching. And you and I liturgically are the inheritors of that tradition because we celebrate the Eucharist. Christ among us, the bread of life, the cup of salvation, and we participate as a community. And Jesus is the one, and it starts in today's gospel, who is inviting us to come to this table. And he invites us to come and partake. He invites everyone, not just a select few. And he assures us that our job as Christians, I believe by our baptismal covenant, is to, when Jesus invites someone, we are to what? Welcome them. Welcome them as part of the community. So that becomes one of the great teachings of Jesus in the bread of life. And so we will pray today that we will always be that welcoming community to take care of those who have been invited by Jesus to share with us this bread of life, this cup of salvation. For Christ is our Passover. And we come to celebrate that today. And we are invited to take the bread and take the wine. These are the gifts of God for the people of God. We take them in remembrance that Christ died for us. And we feed on him with our hearts with praise and thanksgiving. So let's come back again next week and hear what else he has to say about being the bread of life. And let's always remember that he is the one who invites, and we are the ones who welcome. Amen. Amen.
God's peace. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
On this beautiful Sunday, welcome. Whether you're here in person with us or online, welcome. I don't think we had a bluebird playing in the background, but I feel like God is with us. The Holy Spirit is with us today on this Sunday. I do have several announcements that I want to highlight. You will find more in your bulletin today, so please make note of those. Also, the Herald, the monthly August edition of the Herald, was emailed out to you this morning. We have some hard copies in the back if you prefer a hard copy. Please grab one of those. We have a more fulsome edition of the Herald. Kathy always does such a great job getting that publication out, but this month we've got a lot of information in, so please either read that electronically or via hard copy. Just a reminder that the diocesan guidelines now for COVID are that those who have not been vaccinated, a mask is required, and for those who have been vaccinated, it's recommended. And those guidelines are subject to change. You'll see some other announcements. Operation Christmas Challenge, you can read about that. You can read about altar flower donations are now being accepted. And that ties into my next announcement, and that is that our plan, and we're still on track for this, next Sunday, the 8th, will be our last Sunday here in this space. So we will honor and thank Mother Boo officially and formally. She'll be with us next Sunday at that service. We have a gift for her that's from the congregation that we're going to present to her. So please be ready and be here for that, our last Sunday here. It's been such a gift and blessing to be in this space. On the 15th, the following Sunday, so 2 weeks from today, we plan on being back in the church, back at 123 West Sale Street. And we will continue with the 9:30 service probably through September and the first Sunday in October. That's St. Michael's Day, the first Sunday in October. Now, we are slowly and gradually kind of working out the kinks and building back up to our full schedule. So please be patient, because although the sanctuary will be ready for our worship on the 15th, and we'll have some working bathrooms, thank goodness, there will be other construction going on in that facility. Now, just to set your expectations, because as Father Paul mentioned, there's always a backstory, right? There's always a backstory. Well, I got to tell you, your clergy, administrative staff, your wardens, and your vestry have worked extremely hard. I know a year seems like a long time, but actually for a $4 million commercial construction project, a year and having been delayed 6 months through insurance negotiations, this is a minor miracle that we're getting back into the building in this amount of time. And we're getting back into the building, not just in a fair amount of time, but back to a very high standard. So there have been major improvements that some you will see and some you will not. Now, there are some subtle differences. So if you're someone who is resistant to change, I don't want you to focus on those things that you might see as negative, because we are coming back to a vastly improved physical plan. We've got a completely brand new roof, all new air conditioning units, new tiles, fresh coat of paint, a brand new children's ministry wing. We have plans for a recovery house. As you know, if you've read some of the communications, we're coming back to much better situations. So what I want you to do in not only this situation, but also in your lives, is to live into and focus on those things that are improvements. Live into the silver lining of this past hurricane season. And come into that space with a heart just filled with gratitude and thanksgiving, because we have a lot to be grateful for. So I make that announcement. All this is a big lead up. Last Sunday here in the Commons will be next Sunday, and then our first Sunday back in the church will be the 15th. And you can tell that I'm excited about that. But please be patient, because there will be other construction going on in our facility. So the parish hall will not be ready by then. So we were not going to be able to have our breakfast and formation opportunities until probably the first Sunday in October. So just want to set some expectations and also give you that update. And I think those are all the announcements that I have today. Walk in love as Christ loves us. Oh no, that's not, sorry. Godly play. So godly play, as we ramp back up, and I don't know if you've seen on Facebook, we were gifted a wonderful set of godly play modules from Christ Church in Covington. Very grateful, and some of you are former attendees of Christ Church, members of Christ Church, so we're very grateful for that. So now we have all the modules, we just need teachers. So you will see in the email that was sent out this week that we have a godly play informational meeting on the 10th. This will be in additional communications to you as well. Then we have a working meeting in the Godly Play room on August 14th. And then there'll be a formal training for those teachers on September the 18th. Now, this program, for those people who have participated and have been trained, they really feel as though it's not a donation of their time, it's an enrichment of their spiritual life. So I'd really like for you to pray if you have an affinity for kids and are a good teacher. If this is something that's resonating with you, pray about that, because I think it could really lead to a deepening of your spiritual life. Godly play. Stay tuned for that. Now, walk in love as Christ loves us and gave himself for us in offering and sacrifice.